Why, hello, my loves, and welcome back to Spook Manor. Are you here for a twisted tale that haunts of the Wild West? Then join me as we follow a lonely man on a journey of the heart. It is a cool autumn night in Cheyenne, Wyoming, where our story begins. Robert Doyle makes his way into the immaculate lobby of the historic Plains Hotel after a long day's drive. The hotel, which was built in 1911, features classic Western decor that elegantly reflects the past in a historic yet chic modern fashion. He has to travel for work and usually finds himself exhausted at the end of the day, going from town to town on seemingly endless stretches of road across the U.S. He has taken on this job with a high pay raise a few months ago. Being the star of the company, and with a wife and 3 children at home, it is a job he believes he cannot walk away from, despite the fact that his wife has begun urging him to quit. He is a devoted man, very loyal to his family in every regard. His desire is to give them the best house, the best schools, and all the things they could ever dream of. But the job required him to be gone for months at a time, and he often feels that he is missing out on the most precious moments of their childhood. It is in the late hours of the night that he finds himself missing his beloved wife the most. The hours are long and lonely without her. His heart needs companionship, and after 4 months without her affections, Robert has grown more and more frustrated with his situation. He checked in to room 444 on the 4th floor. Throwing his bag on the cabinet, he didn't take time to unpack or undress before he collapsed in the large, comfortable bed and fell right into a deep, heavy sleep. It was around 1 a.m. when he was awakened by the sounds of a cheerful couple laughing and giggling. At first, it sounded as though they were inside the room with him, but upon turning on the light, it was clear that they weren't. They must have been in the hallway, as they were now rattling the doorknob, trying to get in. Annoyed by their drunken behavior, Robert got out of bed to tell them that they had the wrong room. Their noisy affections stung at Robert's heart as he longed for the days when he and his wife shared such passions. Quickly he yanked open the door, prepared to angrily give them a piece of his mind. But no one was there. Just a long, empty hallway that seemed eerily dim by the late hour. Shaking his head, he wondered if he had imagined or dreamed the whole thing. Locking the door behind him, Robert slowly made his way back to bed. The fall western sun peered through the heavily curtained window when he awoke the next morning. To his absolute shock, the contents of his suitcase had been removed from his bags and were now strewn across the room as though someone had thrown them in a fit of rage. At first, he was angered by the mess, but then was struck with fear at the realization that someone had been in his room while he was sleeping. His things were thrown with such force, there was no way he wouldn't have heard what was happening. There was little time to give it much thought, though. The convention was about to begin, and he was required to be there at a certain time. But regardless of his obligations, he spoke with the manager about the events and asked someone to review the hotel's security cameras in hopes the culprit could be caught. Hours at the convention had passed. Robert spoke and shook hands with the many faces that would walk through, knowing full well that he will likely never remember or see them again. He was exhausted when the manager came to him around lunchtime. They had reviewed the footage and found absolutely nothing, not even the couple that he had mentioned. This reality made him sick to his stomach. If the events of last night weren't real, then the problem was with him. He felt weak knowing that his mind had toyed with him, and tried to shrug it off with the excuse that he had simply been too tired, imagining it all. The stress caused him to miss his wife deeply, and his heart ached with sadness. She always knew how to comfort him in times like this, but it is going to be another 2 months of traveling before they will be together again. Though fatigued from the long day, Robert found himself too tired to sleep that night. He was restless, and around 12 a.m. decided to make his way downstairs to the restaurant for a hard drink. As he walked through the door, a beautiful young woman in retro 1920s dress was sitting at the bar. She smiled up at him and gave him a little wink. Robert was a bit taken aback by this. She was at least 20 years younger than he was, and far more attractive. He had never been much of a looker himself, and wasn't used to attention from women. But he then thought to himself as he looked around the empty restaurant, "It is very late. He is the only man here, and she is probably feeling as lonely as he is." With a stomach full of butterflies, he casually struck up a conversation, and she appeared to be absorbed by his every word. She laughed at his jokes, flashed beautiful flirtatious smiles, and would sensually touch his arm and leg as they talked. After about an hour, she whispered in his ear with a suggestion of going back to her room. Robert instantly turned beet red with embarrassment and nervously informed her that he was married. He braced for a letdown, fearing she would be upset that he had led her on. But she only laughed and said, "Well, you Johns always are," and added that she didn't care as long as she still got paid at the end of the night. And it dawned on him what she was actually talking about. It was her outfit that had thrown him off. She didn't look like what you would expect from a lady of the night, and he was shocked that the hotel would allow such activity at all. He calmly declined her offer before casually excusing himself. He loved his wife and his family dearly, and would never risk it all to soothe one lonely night. But the woman grabbed his arm with a seductive smile, letting him know that she would be here tomorrow night if he happened to change his mind. As Robert rode the elevator, he could not stop thinking about the beautiful woman at the bar. His mind was full of sinful thoughts as he began to slowly walk down the dark hallway of the 4th floor. He suddenly felt a chill run up his spine, and he could hear a second pair of footsteps echoing around him. Yet, he was the only one standing in the hallway. He stopped and looked behind him, feeling as though he were being followed with eyes upon his back. Goosebumps crawled through his body as he reached the door and started to unlock it. The mysterious sound of steps continued to draw near. He began to panic, and he rushed through the door as soon as it opened, slamming it shut behind him. Sweat dripped down his face as he listened, watching intensely through the peephole for whoever was following him. But no one ever appeared, and the ghostly footsteps had stopped altogether. After a quick shower, Robert crawled into bed. There were no more strange occurrences since his ordeal in the hallway, and he shrugged it off as hallucinations from stress. Again, he fell into the large bed and tried to sleep. He fantasized about the woman at the bar in ways that would break his dear wife's heart. But it was only fantasy. What harm could that do? It was then that sleep took hold, and his fantasies became his dreams. He laughed with the beautiful woman as they drunkenly walked down the 4th floor hallway to his room. They passionately kissed through the doorway and fell into the large bed. The whole world had become an old Western movie as he tore away at her clothing. But then there was a loud crash. His wife, dressed in blue turn-of-the-century gown, had thrown open the door with gun in hand. She screamed at him for cheating on her, throwing the contents of the cabinet across the room as she cried out about his betrayal. In a raging fit of insanity, she lifted the barrel of the gun and pointed it at them. There was a loud bang, a flash, causing Robert to wake from his nightmare with a racing heart. But the nightmare was not over. He heard the gun fire a second time, flew out of bed, and looked down the hallway. He could clearly hear the unquestionable sound of a woman running and crying hysterically. Panicked, Robert ran for the elevator as fast as humanly possible. But when it was moving too slow for comfort, he took the stairs and could still hear the woman running with him, and her ghostly cries of "What have I done?" echoed in the stairwell. Yet the woman's cries faded away as he reached the 2nd floor. Out of breath and sweating profusely, he finally made it to the ground floor and dashed into the lobby. Grabbing at the security guard and terrorized by the night's events, Robert pleaded with him for help. As soon as he finished his tale, both the guard and the receptionist began to laugh. Robert could not believe this. What could possibly be so funny? And the receptionist calmly replied, "Oh, that's just Rosie. She's known as the ghost bride of the Plains Hotel. Legend has it she and her husband were newlyweds honeymooning here in the hotel's early history. My guess is sometime in the 1920s. Apparently one night, the husband strayed off to the bar while he believed his wife was sleeping. Well, he met a local prostitute, and they decided to go to her room on the 4th floor for a little fun. What they didn't know was that Rosie saw them, and she followed them to the escort's room. She became so angry with the infidelity that she grabbed her husband's gun and shot them both. Once she realized what she had done, she ran down the hall screaming, and once she got to her own room on the 2nd floor, she took the gun and turned it on herself. Now the spirits of the husband, the prostitute, and Rosie herself are said to haunt the 4th and 2nd floor, with the most paranormal activity taking place in room 444, where their lives were taken. At this, Robert grew pale, for you see that was, in fact, his very room. But the guard spoke up and interrupted his thoughts. "Aren't you that weird guy that was in the bar last night? You sat there for over an hour just talking to an empty chair." It was then that Robert was flooded with emotions. Not only had he clearly seen real-life apparitions and their crimes in action, but he apparently had a date with a real-life ghost. And on that note, Robert made a run for it. He quit his job and flew back home to be with his loving family, where he truly belongs and is meant to be, living a life that is happily ever after. So tell me, my loves, is the historic Plains Hotel really haunted by the crimes of betrayal? Would you, in fact, stay in room 444? Please comment down below and like and subscribe for more fictional stories that are often of actual urban legends and sometimes have historical reference. See you next week and have a good night.